Hey, welcome back. So, in the last few videos, we looked at raising exceptions and we also looked at logging with the logging module, which is pretty useful. Let me give you one more pro tip for finding errors in your code, or better yet, when you run into an error, how to debug it using a integrated development environment. Uh, I've been showing you Mu throughout the lessons, so I'm going to show you how to debug programs using the built-in debug tool in Mu. So let me stop this, and we have a couple options. First off, if we just click the debug button, the debugger starts, okay? And you see that right here, let me zoom in. We see that import logging is highlighted. So really when you click the debug button, it just starts on line 1 of your code, and it's going to let you go through every line of your code one at a time, so you can step through your code one line at a time and see what's going on. And this can sometimes help you figure out where your error is right away without even putting in any logging or having to use logging debug statements. This is really a great tool to help you just step through when you first run into an error. The debug statements and all that stuff are useful for more complex issues, but this is just another tool in your toolbox. So we're on line 1, and up here at the top we have a couple options. We have the continue button, the stop button, step over, step in, and step out. Stop just stops. Makes sense. So let's click debug, get it going again. If I click continue, it just runs the entire program. Okay, well, that wasn't particularly useful, right? So let's stop again, click debug. So stop just kills it, continue just runs the whole program. What are these other buttons? So step over, step in, step out. So step over, if I run that line of code, it will take this, whatever line I'm on, it'll run it and then take me to the next line. Now, on first glance, it's like, okay, isn't that what the code always does? It just runs that one line and goes to line 2? Not actually. So if I click step in, it will take me into that line of code. And when you go in, you can see that, think about when you make a function call, right? If I have a function call on line 1 here, it's going to call that function. And we know that it's going to actually go to that function and run all the code inside that function. And then when it's done, it's going to come back to line 1, be like, okay, I ran that function. Here's the value that's returned or whatever. Then it takes you to line 2, right? So there can be all kinds of code that happens when you just call a function. Well, that's with all different kinds of code that happens. So like if I press step in here on import logging, it just imports a module. Nothing crazy, right? Now, if I press step in on logging basic config here, so I'm calling a function. Let's see what happens. Whoa, it just took me into a whole nother piece of code, and I'm on line 1967. I don't know what any of this is, right? And it's like a little confusing. You zoom up or you scroll up. Whoa, there's a function, basic config. Wait, isn't that what we just called on logging? It is. It turns out, right? This is a cool way to see what's actually going on here, because you haven't really been able to see this so far. This is the code for the logging class. So, there's a lot going on here, but, you ever want to go see what the logging code looks like, it's 2,200 lines of code that they wrote for you, which is super nice. Now, if I just click step out, this will get me out of here, get me back to where I was. Okay? So I don't really care what's going on there. If I had a problem with logging and maybe the values I provided, I could use step in to go in and see how the value I gave to logging.basicconfig is being used and maybe figure out how to provide the right value here. But generally, with this out of box stuff like this, you don't need to worry about that. So let me start back over. And we're on import logging, right? We say, if I click step over, it just goes to the next line. If I would have clicked step in, since that line of code doesn't do anything except import a module, it still takes me to line 4. Now I'm on line 4, and last time we clicked step in, that took me into the code for the logging class. There was a lot there. I don't really want to see all that. I just want that line of code to run, and I want to go to line 5, right? Click step over. That takes me to the next line of code. And over here on the right, I haven't talked about it yet, but this is a debug inspector. And this shows you what's happening behind the scenes. So we have a value here called logging, and it shows you, hey, this is a module logging from, and it shows you the actual path on your system where that module comes from. Now let's go step over again. I'm on bank balance equals 100. If I click that line of code, look what happens. Boom, bank balance 100. So it's keeping a running track of the different variables in my program. This can be really useful. Now I'm in the try block, and I want to click step in so I can keep going through the program. Really, step in is what you want to use unless you're calling a function that you don't really care to know what happens. So if I click step in again, cost of product 200. Interesting. Now, if I run this line of code, we know new balance should show up. New balance, minus 100. And logging.debug. Now, this is a function call that I don't want to click step in. If I did, it takes me to all this crazy stuff that I don't really care about. Just click step out. Takes me back. And logging.debug ran. And just keep going through. But when you're trying to debug your program, using these buttons to kind of slowly walk through your code can help you see the values show up. What this might help you do is see things like, whoa, wait a minute. I called my function I defined, and I thought I was passing it a list variable, right? But my list variable over here on the right is empty. Something's going wrong, right? You don't even have to create a print statement to see that, or a logging statement. You can just jump through the debugger and see the values and how they change as each line of code runs. And that can be really useful for finding out, wait a minute, I thought that, I took the user's input and I thought it was a number, but I forgot to use the int function, right? To convert it to an int. And, I asked them, how much do they get paid by the hour? And it kept that value as a string, whatever it is you're doing. So you just keep going through here line by line until you get to the end of your program, and then it says finished. Now there's one more piece that you can do to this. So you can add in what are called breakpoints, and basically what that tells your program is, for example, I know that everything's good until here, and I don't want to step through all these things. I kind of just want the program to run until I get to line 9. And then I want to start stepping through, right? And if I do that, all I do is click on the line right here and a little red dot shows up. This is Mu. It's pretty much like this for most IDEs, but in Mu, you click right here, little red dot shows up. That's a breakpoint. Click debug, and it actually takes me all the way to that line. So it ran all the other code, and now I'm here. Now I can start stepping into things, right? And wait till I get to my error, wherever it was. And there's my error. So what you can do is you can keep moving your, if you think you know about where an error is, right? Let's say I know that, or maybe you just have a suspicion that your code runs correctly to a certain point, and you're kind of curious, like, I want to know if everything's working as expected when I get to setting the new balance here equal to bank balance minus cost of product. I'll set my breakpoint to line 12 and click debug. And just like that, all the code's already ran. So now I just come over here and look, okay, new balance is minus 100, cost of product is 200, bank balance is 100. Okay, all that's working like it should. But that's breakpoints, and that is the debugger in Mu. Hopefully you found that helpful, and that should help you with some of the debugging. I would say with raising exceptions, with the logging we talked about, and with using the debugger, you've now got a few more tools in your arsenal to help you with the code that we're writing. You know, up to this point, you've probably learned just enough to be dangerous, just enough to write code where you run into weird errors, and hopefully these new tools will help you combat those errors and find out what's going wrong with your program. Because in the next few videos, we're actually going to take it a little step further, and we're going to learn about some of the most useful tools you can use for automation today. The next few videos are going to be more focused around projects, fun, different projects that we can do for communicating with websites, and just more general project ideas that are fun to work through. And we're going to implement all of the things we've learned in all the lessons so far to create those projects, and I'll throw in some new stuff as well. But this is the last video to cover all of the core basics for Python. So congratulations for making it this far. You've stuck with it, and you know it's not easy to learn a new programming language, so I commend you for continuing to work through and learn all these things. It takes time, it takes dedication, and you've made it this far. So take the tools you've learned today, use them to empower you, and in the next few videos we're going to have fun with it. We're going to use the tools that we learned, the basic building blocks, and we're just going to build cool stuff. So I hope you enjoy that, and I'm really excited for what's to come. Thanks.